1v1, adventure+sweet pet, male strong and female growth-oriented, national team Bai Xi was inexplicably pulled into a survival game with a survival rate of only 10%. Small Theater 1 Passerby A, isn't that Bai Xi an assistant? Why has she always been at the top of the list, and Ye Xiao, who has repeatedly claimed to be the most powerful, has been pushed to second place by her? Passerby B, Ye Xiao has never been up since he got down from the first position. This Bai Xi is also amazing. How does a spatial system assist her in achieving this? Bai Xi. Shaking her eyebrows and smiling, what's wrong with the assistants? Assistants can also kill, and they can be very powerful, saving lives in minutes. Ye Xiao. Flattering smile, daughter.in.law, help me draw 2 cards. Small Theater 2 Teammate A. No, the wall is too thick, we need to use explosives. Teammate B. Then we need to go to the police station, where there are all monsters. Bai Xi. What kind of explosives do you need? She drew a circle on the wall, a light curtain appeared, and Bai Xi collapsed directly. Everyone. Sleeping trough. Sister Xi, can you still use this skill like this? P.S. The male and female protagonists belong to the national team and use the game to bring back various technologies and species, develop the world, and lead humanity towards the stars and oceans. CP, Bai Xi x Ye Xiao female lead. Strongest support, skilled at drawing cards male lead. Full ability points, negative luck keywords of the novel. Empress O, she exploded in the survival game without a pop-up window. Empress O, she exploded in the survival game with a complete download of TXT. Empress O, she exploded in the survival game with the latest chapters to read. Chapter 1. Wen'an City 1. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1 Wen'an City 1 Player Bai Xi, congratulations on entering the survival game. In the following tasks, players and the world's indigenous people will enjoy the joy of survival with you. There are 215,370 participants in this round of the game, including 2,000 players. Clearance condition. Become one of the last 10% survivors of the game participants, or one of the last 21,537 people to survive. Please strive to survive and become the last 10% survivors. Game location. Wen'an City special reminder. If a player dies in the mission world, it is true death. The game will erase all traces related to the player, including the original world inside the dilapidated rental house. Bai Xi looked at the white light curtain in front of her in a daze. What is the situation? Isn't she washing up on the dormitory balcony? Why did you change places in one go? Are you dreaming? Bai Xi raised her right hand and didn't even want to take a bite, shaking her hand in pain. Pain, pain, pain. What's the blind howling in broad daylight, disturbing people's clear dreams and making men want to go crazy? Spicy shouts came from the nearby room, and the wooden walls were slapped and clattered. Newcomer side quests. Please choose a safer place to live. Task reward. 1 unrestricted lottery. The white light curtain reappeared before her eyes, and Bai Xi regained her strength and retorted, in broad daylight, you still don't let anyone speak. Leave some words of virtue. Auntie. She's just speaking at a normal volume, why is she disturbing the public? After speaking, Bai Xi looked around. The tattered sofa, the table with almost all the paint peeling off, the short-legged stool tilted, and the walls were also eroded by time, feeling like they could fall down at any time. A few ants the size of nail covers were crawling around the corner of the wall. This house is so old. With a sigh, Bai Xi began to search inside the room. Since she appears here, it indicates that this should be her identity in this world. Sure enough, Bai Xi found an ID card with her appearance and a stack of cash in a black backpack. Simply tidy up, put on her backpack, lock the room, and Bai Xi is ready to leave. Keep this room for now, maybe it will still be useful. The woman next door, dressed in a cheap hip wrap skirt, with a moderate appearance and a face full of low-quality cosmetics, stood at the door and gave Bai Xi a white eye. "These days haven't been peaceful," he said with a sour and sinister tone. "Human traffickers are just staring at unscrupulous little girls." It is obvious that Bai Xi's words about being an old lady made her feel very unhappy. "Auntie, please take care of yourself first." After giving the woman a white eye, Bai Xi turned around and went downstairs. She was busy completing the task now and didn't have time to delay in the trivial matter of talking nonsense. Since it's a survival game, the only way is to find a way to survive, and if you die in the game, not only will you die, but you will also have to erase the information. Being forgotten by someone she cares about is a cruel thing, and Bai Xi doesn't want to be forgotten. The rusty iron stairs creaked as Bai Xi stepped on them. She quickly descended and walked out of the city village, revealing a modern city in front of her. The towering buildings and the dilapidated makeshift sheds and old buildings behind them form a stark contrast, like a lost land filled with despair. Bai Xi took a bus to the city first, and then went to the bank to apply for a 10,000 credit card, which is the highest amount she can get. Since it is a survival game, there will definitely be major disasters or other uncontrollable events that humans cannot resist. A credit card that does not require repayment is no different from a bank card. After inquiring from multiple sources, Bai Xi found a community with good security, and because she didn't know how long she wanted to stay, she wanted to rent it for only 1 month. But the agent replied that the landlord is not willing to rent for at least 6 months and does not want to trouble finding tenants again. Finally, it took her twice the cost of the room to successfully rent this well-decorated 2-bedroom living room. At the moment when the contract was signed and payment was made, the task prompt was completed. After the landlord and the agent left, Bai Xi found a locksmith online who was very far away and changed the lock. Send the locksmith away and lock the door without removing the key. The person who changed the lock told her that as long as she did this, people outside would not be able to twist or enter unless they violently broke the door. Bai Xi walked to the living room and sat down, receiving task rewards and a lottery opportunity. A colorful turntable appeared in front of me, evenly distributed with 5 colors: red, blue, green, gray, and white. The reward levels ranged from high to low, which were red, blue, green, gray, and white. Blind smoking. Bai Xi carefully searched on the turntable without any hint. Forget it, smoke it. Everything is fate. Although she said so, before the lottery, Bai Xi still clasped her hands and prayed to the blue sky outside the window. Grandparents, you must bless me in the sky and let me draw a better reward. Taking a deep breath, Bai Xi clicked on the Start Lottery button in the center of the turntable, and the colorful turntable quickly turned. She stared at the turntable without blinking, and finally the pointer stopped in the red area. Congratulations to player Bai Xi, draw a red reward and receive an evolution activation experience. This activation effect is a permanent personal attribute of the player. Immediately after, Bai Xi felt a piercing pain, her face instantly turned pale, and she was sweating profusely. This feeling is terrible, as if I will die the next second, and my whole body will be torn apart after an unknown amount of time. The pain gradually eased, and Bai Xi recovered. Her personal attribute information appeared in front of her. Bai Xi level. C.level player points. 0, can be used to exchange for comprehensive attributes, lucky draw count. 0, please draw within 1 hour after the task or during the task period, otherwise the cumulative count of this round will be reset to 0, comprehensive attribute. 65, this item is semi-data.driven and for reference only. The upper limit for ordinary humans is 100, including reaction, speed, strength, etc., excluding IQ, ability level. Level 1, storage space 2 cubic meters, space leap 1 meter, game identified as a rare mutated spatial ability, future development unknown, prop. None, obtained from lottery or task, status. None, using items can obtain time or permanent status. After reading her personal attributes, Bai Xi gained a general understanding of herself and the game. She picked up her backpack from the sofa, and with just one thought, the backpack disappeared and appeared in a space she could perceive but didn't know where it was. Another thought, the backpack appeared again. This is just amazing. Bai Xi was pleasantly surprised and tried many times before looking at the position of the TV cabinet. The next moment, she did appear in front of the TV cabinet, but there was still a little distance left. It seems that it can only be 1 meter at most. However, this 1 meter distance can save lives at critical moments and is a very good escape and kill skill, but I don't know how many times it can be used in a day. After using it just now, Bai Xi felt a bit dizzy in her mind. I don't know what kind of urine this game is, so be cautious and don't try it randomly. After walking into the bathroom and cleaning it up briefly, Bai Xi put on her backpack and went out. With her shallow gaming experience, in survival games, resources are essential, and later resources are definitely a big challenge. While it is still a peaceful and prosperous era, she needs to stock up on as many supplies as possible, preferably filling up the space. Taking a taxi to the city shopping center, Bai Xi first bought herself a few sets of changed clothes, and then went into the supermarket to make a big purchase. Anyway, she used her credit card and didn't feel sorry. Considering that there was no hot water in the later stage of the task, Bai Xi stocked up on some self-heating rice, hot pot, mineral water, bread, cookies, chocolate, lactose, lighters, and so on. When passing by the home textile area, I stocked up on a cotton quilt and a tent, and bought 2 multifunctional short knives similar to Swiss military knives in the mall. The starting point of this book is reading. Choose an auspicious day in the Chinese zodiac to publish a new book. I hope everyone likes it. P.S. The female lead is just a 20-year-old ordinary college student. The first story has not yet entered the national team, and she has many shortcomings, but she will gradually grow. In addition, the author accepts everyone's corrections and suggestions, but if they vent negative emotions and maliciously manipulate them, such comments will be deleted directly upon seeing them. I deleted the comments that made me feel unhappy when I saw them. You have the right to comment, and the author and management also have the right to delete comments. In order to provide a good reading environment for most readers, controlling comments is definitely necessary. Another thing is, if you can't continue reading, you don't need to read it, which means that this book is not written for you to read. There is no need to leave a special message to show a sense of existence, and no one cares. A good reading environment and atmosphere need to be maintained by everyone together. Please give it to all true fans who love this book with care. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Wen'an City 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Wen'an City 2. After finishing all of this, it was already 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Hungry, Bai Xi found a crowded restaurant, ordered a bowl of beef noodles, and chewed them slowly. Hey, what's going on lately? So many people are missing, argued a middle-aged man with a Chinese character face at the next table. Recently, there have been a lot of people reporting missing persons to the police station, and the news has been reported several times, said another slightly overweight and younger man. These human traffickers are also too rampant, openly kidnapping. The conversation between the three caught Bai Xi's attention, and she took out her phone to search online. She really found some information. There have been a lot of missing people notices these past few days, both men and women, of all ages. Combined with survival games, the disappearance of these people is probably not that simple. Perhaps a taskmaster like her, in order to achieve 10% of the surviving tasks as soon as possible, may take action early. If it were the latter, she would have to be careful. After finishing her noodles, Bai Xi was ready to go home. Passing by a small alley, she heard faint cries for help inside. I've been staring at you all day, but I've found a chance. Your world is going to end soon, and you're all going to die. If you're good, I can make you live longer. An arrogant and lewd male voice came in. Bai Xi quickly leaned against the wall to hide. Have these taskers already indulged themselves so much? In the alley, women are still struggling, but she is not a match for men, let alone a taskmaster who may have experienced several worlds. Bai Xi hesitated for a moment, but still chose to save the person. She looked around and saw that there were still a dozen or so pedestrians nearby. She picked up the bricks at the foot of the wall and threw them into the alley. She turned around and made a microphone with both hands, pinching her throat and shouting, "Fire, fire, come here." Upon hearing the fire, everyone quickly followed the sound and the sleazy man in the alley panicked. No matter how powerful he was not a match for so many people. The sleazy man covered the woman's mouth and looked towards the alley to see which bastard had ruined his good deed. But Bai Xi had already slipped away, she wouldn't be so foolish. She shouted and stayed here, waiting for her bag to be caught. As more and more people gathered, the sleazy man had to let go of the woman and run out from another alley. The woman quickly hid in the shadow of the alley, tightly covering her mouth, afraid to make any sound. Everyone looked at the entrance of the alley and saw that there was no fire, not even a cigarette. The little girl who had just shouted for fire had gone somewhere. Young people nowadays have no sense of public morality. After roast, the crowd dispersed. After stealing, Bai Xi returned to her rented house, closed the door, sat on the sofa, frowning. Now that the task force is so rampant and the order is disrupted in the later stage, they must be even more reckless. Bai Xi realized that this survival game not only had inexplicable disasters, but also man-made disasters. It's not easy to become the last 20,000 people to survive. On the second day of the game, the survival rate was 99%. Early in the morning, Bai Xi received a push of news from her phone. Last night, dozens of people went missing inexplicably, and many of them went missing during the day. The urban police attach great importance to it and promise to solve the case as soon as possible, never allowing criminals to go unpunished. She had originally planned to stay at home and survive, but she had already stocked up enough supplies, but a new mission came. Novice side task. Please stay at the city police station for 2 hours, within 10 meters of the area. Task reward. Draw a prize once if there is a task, then we can't afford it. We need to take advantage of the beginner's period to earn more rewards. After that, there won't be such a simple task anymore. Picking up her backpack, Bai Xi went out. It's now around 8 o'clock in the morning, and the temperature is just right. The birds outside are chirping in the trees, but Bai Xi feels that the sound is a bit noisy. Stopped a taxi and headed to the police station. Since it is a missing person, there must be many family members reporting the case, there should be news there. Upon hearing that Bai Xi was going to the police station, the driver chatted with her for a while. There have been a lot of strange things lately. A few days ago, I even took a few people to Xishan Park. I asked them where they were going for what, and a few of them stuttered and didn't speak. What are the characteristics of those people? Bai Xi asked. The driver thought for a moment and said, they have a silver password box, which seems very valuable and stays with them throughout the journey. Before getting off the car, the driver instructed, little girl, you look so beautiful. You need to be careful lately. No one can ride around and cause trouble. I will be careful, thank you, master. Closing the car door, Bai Xi turned around and walked towards the police station. Within a 10-meter radius, a white light curtain jumped out again. Countdown starts. A white countdown also appeared in the upper right corner of the line of sight. Bai Xi first circled around the police station to get a rough idea of the situation, so it was easy to run in case of an accident. Then he walked to the row of chairs in front of the police station and sat down. In front of the nearby notice board, there were many people, young and old, as well as a few children aged 7 or 8. The waiting time was long, and Bai Xi chatted with everyone to pass the time. As we chatted, we came to the topic of missing persons. Bai Xi. Auntie, when did you find out that your daughter was missing? The night before yesterday, I asked her to go home for dinner. After 8 o'clock, she didn't come back and no one answered the phone. Later, I asked her friends and they said she went home directly after work. Auntie sighed and said, I hope she's just going out to play and hasn't had time to talk to me. Bai Xi silently wrote in her heart, 2 days ago in the afternoon, from 6 to 8 o'clock. An old man next to him also approached and anxiously said, my grandson went missing yesterday morning. The teacher called to ask why he didn't go to school, and we only found out that he was missing. Our child has always been very good and won't skip class. There must have been an accident. Grandpa, when did your grandson leave? What time did he have class? Bai Xi asked. He goes out at 7 o'clock every day and starts morning self-study at 7:30 in school. With Grandpa and Aunt taking the lead, everyone else started chatting with each other, venting their emotions. Bai Xian quietly became a listener and roughly organized the information given by everyone. She found that most of the missing persons had incidents between 7:09 a.m. and 6:08 p.m. in the evening. Is it because there were fewer people or the sky was dark during these two time periods? While contemplating, the child's startled cries came from beside. Everyone gathered around to take a look. Oh! There is a big hole under the tree, at least 2 fists the size of an adult. How could there be such a big mouse hole here? Isn't this a mouse hole? How could a mouse have opened a hole here, and this hole is so big? Is there such a big mouse? Soon someone exclaimed in surprise again. Look, there's still one over there. Everyone hurriedly ran around and gathered around. This hole is in the roadside green belt, and if you don't pay attention, you won't be able to find it. Compared to the mouse that everyone had just guessed, this hole has a diameter of 30 to 40 centimeters, and there is also a rustling sound coming from inside. Please vote and comment on the new book issue. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Wen'an City 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Wen'an City 3 Looking at the slanting downward opening, Bai Xi had an intuition that something was wrong. She urged everyone to step back and glanced at the countdown in the upper right corner. There was still 1.5 hours left. Everyone stood back 1 meter and looked curiously at the dark cave entrance. In no time, the sound coming from the cave grew louder and louder, even the ground began to vibrate. Bai Xi's eyebrows furrowed deeper and deeper. Sure enough, she overthought it. The first task was simple enough, and the second one couldn't be as simple. At this moment, the police also ran out, obviously someone had just run in and reported the case. Several police officers surrounded 2 entrances, one large and one small, with warning lines. Another kind-hearted police officer looked at the crowd and said, "Let's go home first. We will notify everyone as soon as we have the result, and we will handle this hole." Between speaking, the sound coming from the big hole grew louder and louder. I don't know if it was an illusion, but Bai Xi seemed to hear the sound of clicking, and her heart became increasingly anxious. She silently ran to the edge of a 10-meter range, hiding behind a big tree, watching the situation here. At this moment, with 80 minutes left in the countdown, Bai Xi took a deep breath and encouraged herself in her heart. There are still 80 minutes left, we must persevere. Bai Xi, you can do it, come on. She stared at the countdown, silently counting seconds. Many onlookers scattered in front, with only a few brave and curious young people remaining. The police took out a remote-controlled car with a camera and searchlight from the station, put it in the hole, and operated the remote control to explore forward. What dug this hole with? Is it a snake hole? It's so big. There won't be a millennium python down there, will there? Such a big snake has already become sperm, hasn't it? Come on. Guess what? Can it be more realistic? Maybe it was a hole dug by the exploration or engineering team, and accidentally forked the way. Everyone was speculating wildly. 5 minutes passed like this, but for Bai Xi, these 5 minutes were like 5 hours. Looking at the situation of everyone in the distance, it seemed that the voice had decreased a lot, but Bai Xi was even more afraid to go over and could only closely monitor. When observing the situation, Bai Xi noticed a handsome man standing across the street. Visually standing at least 180 centimeters tall, with a straight nose bridge and slightly pursed lips, the whole person appears exceptionally beautiful under the sunlight. TSK. Which noble young master came out to experience life? Amazed for a second, Bai Xi turned her attention to the police because several young men who were watching screamed. There are still 74 minutes left in the countdown. What flashed by just now? It seems like a foot, right? How can I look and still have one eye? A few young men were extremely scared, but they were curious and unwilling to leave. Police uncle, there won't be any monsters down here, will there? A few police officers also felt a bit uneasy. The fleeting scene just now was clearly not an artificial object. You guys go home first. The experienced old police officer made a decisive decision, ensuring the safety of the people first, and then instructed the small police officers around him, keep exploring inside. If it's really an abnormal situation, report it to the higher authorities as soon as possible. A few young men didn't go too far. They were curious and thought that with the police present, there shouldn't be too much danger. Just like Bai Xi, they hid in the distance and quietly watched. Bai Xi stared at the situation on the police's side, occasionally glancing at the countdown, feeling increasingly nervous in her heart. The man across from me has been staring at the police all along. Is he also here to do the task? Suddenly, the police officer controlling the remote-controlled car shouted loudly, urging pedestrians on the street to quickly find a place to hide. Before he could finish shouting, a huge ant poked its head out and its two antennae, resembling antennas, kept spinning. Bai Xi was stunned. This ant must be as big as an adult bear dog. That huge jaw, there should be no problem cutting the bone. Now she knows what happened to those missing persons. There are still 71 minutes left in the countdown. After the big ant poked its head out, it crawled straight towards the nearest police officer. The police officer quickly dodged, but his leg was scratched. After the ants grow up, their speed seems to have decreased, similar to that of ordinary people, but they have a large number and enjoy group fights. At the entrance of the cave, new big ants continue to drill outward. Seeing that the situation was not good, the pedestrians around began to panic and flee. Several young people took out their phones and took a few photos, and also ran away with oil on their feet. At this moment, the man across the street moved. He held a sharp dagger that flickered with cold light and ran towards a large ant attacking the police, cutting off its tentacles with one blow. The pain made the big ant struggle frantically. Its 6 legs, like sharp knives, pierced several large holes in the floor tiles before charging towards the man. The other big ants also surrounded it. The man is agile and calmly dodges among ants, occasionally delivering a clean and sharp blow. Some police officers with guns ran out of the house, shooting at the ants. The dense and loud gunshots kept coming one after another, and the scene was chaotic. But the shells of these ants are very hard, and bullets cannot penetrate them at all, leaving only shallow marks on them. The man was surrounded by ants approaching him, but he was agile. He stabbed the back of the nearby big ant with a knife, used his strength to flip out the encirclement, and then stabbed the ant's head with a knife on the back, continuing to fight with the big ant Zhou Xian. But there were quite a few big ants, and the man jumped out of the enclosure. Soon, new ants surrounded him again. The police couldn't hold on either, and everyone had wounds big and small on their bodies. There are still 68 minutes left. Bai Xi nervously watched the situation ahead, unaware that a large ant was crawling towards her from behind. But she keenly felt a chill on her back, like a yawn on her spine. Looking back, with a frightened expression on his face, he quickly ran forward. The big ant is only 3 or 4 meters away from her, and its huge jaw is like it's at her feet. It's too scary. When Bai Xi ran out, the police immediately noticed her and shouted, "Enter the police station, quickly enter the police station." Bai Xi ran into the police station at a sprint speed of 100 meters that she had never seen before in her life. In the corner of her eye, she noticed that the man had killed several big ants but was not injured at all. On the other hand, several other personnel involved in the battle were more or less injured. Bai Xi admires it immensely. This is the strong. As time passed, the battle outside became increasingly fierce, and Bai Xi became a bit anxious. There are more and more big ants, and there is still an hour left for the task. It's strange that these few of them can persist for an hour. Even if you persist for an hour, you probably won't be able to run out. Bai Xi quickly took out her phone to search for information online. Big ant is also an ant, so her weaknesses should be similar, right? Ants do not like the smells of vinegar, Sichuan pepper, lemon, burning rubber, etc. Looking for investment, recommended votes, and comments. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Wen'an City 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Wen'an City 4. She quickly asked the police if there were any of these things. "I have lemons." A female auxiliary police officer ran back into the room to find a large bag of lemons, while another female auxiliary police officer also took out a bottle of vinegar. It's not a big deal if someone loves lemon water, it's quite normal. The problem is, why is there still vinegar? We often work overtime, and sometimes when we're starving, we cook our own noodles and prepare some seasonings. The female auxiliary police officer smiled awkwardly. It's not easy. Bai Xi expressed understanding. Subsequently, a few people found a juicer from the lounge, squeezed the lemon into juice, filtered it with a cloth, and poured it into the watering pot for watering the flowers. The things are ready, who will go? The remaining few are girls who work as civil servants in the police station and are afraid of the big ants outside. Bai Xi glanced at the countdown in the upper right corner. There was still a whole hour left. The number of big ants is still increasing, not to mention 1 hour is half an hour, the number will be unimaginable. It is impossible to give up the task. With a grit of her teeth, Bai Xi ran out with a showerhead in hand. However, she didn't rush out at all and sprinkled a mixture of lemon and vinegar on the nearest big ant first. Smelling the scent of lemon and vinegar, the antennae on the big ant's head moved and retreated a bit. Useful. Bai Xi felt a sense of joy in her heart as she scattered mixed liquid in circles around the periphery of the crowd's battle. The big ants smelled the stimulating smell and their antennae moved wildly, retreating one after another towards the entrance of the cave. The retreating ants suddenly relieved the pressure on the outside fighting crowd. They took advantage of the situation and solved several large ants. Bai Xi continued to narrow down her range until she forced the ants back into the hole and poured in all the remaining mixture, which finally gave her a sigh of relief. Everyone quickly brought a large wooden board to cover the hole, and pressed it tightly with stones to prevent the odor from evaporating. Seeing no signs of the big ant coming out, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The old police officer looked at Bai Xi and thanked her. "Little girl, thank you. You really saved our lives just in time for the rain. Help each other." Bai Xi smiled and thought to herself that there should be no problem with the task now. "Everyone, take a seat in the bureau first. We will report the news immediately." "It should be okay for now," the old police officer comforted. Entering the police station, the danger was temporarily relieved, and everyone relaxed and got to know each other for a while. The old police officer's name is Tan Mingshan, and the younger police officer's name is Han Dong. There are two other police officers in their 30s, one named Sua Jin and the other named Fang He. The two female auxiliary police officers are Du Yu and Huang Xing, respectively. The man who acted with righteousness is called Qi Shuo. Bai Xi looked at the countdown and found that there were still 40 minutes left. In order not to be driven away early, she started to be speechless. "Uncle Tan, is it just a few of you at the police station? This police station looks quite large, why are these only a few people?" They're all on vacation this Saturday, Han Dong explained. He took a sip of hot water and looked at Ye Xiao curiously. Brother Qi, you're so skilled. Are you a trainee? Ye Xiao. I have been practicing martial arts since I was young and have some martial arts skills. Little brother, I think your dagger is pretty good. Even bullets can't penetrate ant shells. Your dagger pierced through in just one go. Tan Mingshan had long noticed Ye Xiao's dagger, which was sharper than he knew. Bai Xi guessed in her heart that it was mostly a reward given by the system. Find someone specifically to create it. Ye Xiao took out a white cloth and wiped the colorless transparent liquid on the dagger. The black blade is engraved with ancient patterns, the sharp blade sparkles with cold light, and there seems to be the clang of weapons in my ears. Just by looking at this appearance, you know it's not an ordinary dagger. Qi Gu, how does your dagger compare to the legendary divine weapon? Can you blow your hair and break your hair? Han Dong was very interested, his eyes sparkling as he watched the dagger. It's not that powerful, it's just sharper. After speaking, Ye Xiao released the dagger from its scabbard and put it away. Seeing Ye Xiao put away the dagger, Han Dong felt embarrassed to say something like, "Take a look." Instead, he asked, "Brother Qi, which master made this dagger for you? Give me his contact information. I also want a dagger like this. Can you afford such a good divine weapon with your salary? This dagger costs around 100,000 yuan. Tan Mingshan slapped Han Dong on the back of the head and blinked at him. Ye Xiao clearly didn't want to talk too much about the issue of the dagger. Isn't it annoying for Han Dong to ask so much? Han Dong also reacted, touched his nose, and stopped talking. Ye Xiao noticed the actions of the two and didn't pay much attention. He turned his head to look at Bai Xi, indicating something. "You're so brave that you didn't run away." He smiled very friendly, but Bai Xi had an extra heart and pretended to be foolish, saying, "I'm a curious person. Besides, I'm hiding so far, and there's a police officer in front of me. I'm not afraid. Bai Xi, don't worry, as long as we are here, you won't get hurt." Han Dong patted his chest to guarantee that as he had just stepped out of school, he had great enthusiasm for the police cause. Zhou Jin and Fong he walked over with a few boxes of instant noodles and said, "Everyone should be hungry too. There's nothing to entertain, only a few barrels of instant noodles. Just eat some, I won't choose," Bai Xi said. During the conversation, she glanced at the countdown and found that there were still 32 minutes left. Bai Xi slowly started eating instant noodles and occasionally chatted with everyone. The police didn't notice anything unusual about her, they just thought this little girl was particularly talkative and curious. In order to receive rewards and pass the time, Bai Xi has a super thick-skinned face. Even awkward chatting is just chatting. Anyway, once the task is completed, there won't be a chance to meet again. For this reason, she boldly asked Ye Xiao, "Qi Gu, look. Meeting each other is fate, which means we deserve to know each other. Do you still lack leg accessories?" She is now a beginner in survival, and if she could find a big shot to lead her, it would be absolutely impressive. "No shortage, thank you." Ye Xiao decisively refused, not foolish, bringing someone he had just met for less than 2 hours and was not a relative. As expected, since the boss was unwilling and Bai Xi didn't force it, she could handle it herself. Eating a bucket of instant noodles and chatting for so long, it's time for Bai Xi's task. Under the pretext of using the restroom, Bai Xi received task rewards in the restroom, and the turntable that appeared last time reappeared. "Grandparents, continue to bless me." Bai Xi clicked to start the lottery, and the colored dial began to rotate. Soon, the pointer stopped in the green area. Congratulations to player Bai Xi, winning this round of green rewards and obtaining a growth card. It can increase speed by 30% and last for 10 minutes. Ding! It has been detected that the player is a space-type superpower, and all item rewards will be stored in the player's personal storage space. Please check your inbox. Investment seeking, everyone invest. Add some exposure to the book. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Wen'an City. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Wen'an City. As soon as the new news appeared, Bai Xi felt that her storage space had added a shiny card. Take out the rectangular card, and the front-bottom image is very mysterious, with rune-like patterns and some characters she doesn't know. The only characters she knows are 30% growth rate, and there are some precautions on the back. 1. Disposable consumables, not reusable. 2. Time-limited card, non-permanent attribute increase, can be permanently stored. 3. There is a certain chance that this card will drop after the player dies. The precautions reminded Bai Xi. A 10% survival rate means that cards can be dropped, which means players can kill each other and obtain cards from others. In the later stages of the game, the number of survivors decreases, and players inevitably engage in battles. In order to survive, it is very possible to kill other players to obtain their cards and increase the probability of survival. This game is even more difficult than she imagined, especially in the later stages. Those hidden bosses will definitely kill, but in the early stages, it will be safer. Because they need other players to do tasks and obtain cards. I just don't know how many novice players like her and how many experienced experts there are in a game. Thinking of this, Bai Xi sighed about her own fate. How could she be so unlucky to be selected by the game? Put the card back into the space, and Bai Xi washed her hands and walked out of the toilet. She created a small space in the space specifically for storing items and cards for system rewards. Outside, Tan Mingshan is answering a phone call, and everyone is quietly watching him. Yes, I understand. Alright. Let's handle it ourselves. Alright, I'll wait for your message. After hanging up the phone, before Tan Mingshan could speak, everyone asked, Uncle Tan, when will the troops send someone? Tan Mingshan shook his head and looked worried. Large ants have appeared in many places, and the entire city's military and police have been sent to rescue the victims. We are temporarily safe here, so we won't be using manpower. I have already reported the ants' weaknesses to them and should be able to solve them soon. They have asked us to wait for news. As soon as they heard that it could be resolved, everyone felt relieved, except for Bai Xi and Ye Xiao, who remained silent. Uncle Tan, have you reported such a big incident to the province? When will the rescue from other cities arrive? Bai Xi asked. This is the most crucial issue. If mutated ants are the key to survival in this round of the game, they are likely to riot later on. And most importantly, there are also larger soldier ants in the ant colony. Even ordinary worker ants are so big. How big are soldier ants? Just thinking about it, Bai Xi is under immense pressure. Another name for survival games is the game of dying. I have already reported the news to the higher-ups. They have reacted quickly to such a big matter. Tan Mingshan has confidence in the troops. Even if the higher-level government sends people, it will still be tomorrow's event. These ants may rush out of the cave at any time, so let's be careful ourselves. Ye Xiao suggested. Bai Xi also nodded in agreement. Even if rescue comes, it's very likely that we won't be able to care about it. We still need to find a way to save ourselves. Wait a little longer. If there's any news, the city will call. Let's go find the rescue team to meet up. Tan Mingshan wants to find a large army. As a police officer, he has confidence in the government. The room was quiet for a while. Du Yu, who had been silent for a long time, spoke up and said, Captain Tan, I want to go home and take a look. My mother is with her child at home, and I'm not at ease. Just make sure they're safe. I'll come back right away, okay? My daughter went to the training class today and I'm not sure if she's back. I didn't get through to her on the phone just now. Fong He also expressed some concern. Don't worry, hurry home and take a look. Tan Mingshan suggested. Thank you, Captain Tan. After thanking him, Du Yu, Fang He, Zhou Jin, and Huang Xing all hurried back home. The room suddenly became deserted, and Tan Mingshan looked at Bai Xi and Qi Shuo. "Aren't you both going home to take a look?" "I'm from another province and I can't go back for a while, so I won't run," Bai Xi replied. Qi Shuo also nodded. "Where's Captain Tan?" Bai Xi asked curiously. "Being alone, my parents will die long ago." Tan Mingshan looked very open, but his words were somewhat lonely. "I'm also from another city, and the four of us happen to be companions," Han Dong smiled. Tan Mingshan nodded. Bai Xi didn't care. She didn't have any special plans now, it's the same everywhere. It's better to follow two responsible police officers, Tan Mingshan and Han Dong, than to be outside. "Uncle Tan, ants are quite skilled at drilling holes. Is it safe here? Will it be hollowed out below?" Bai Xi was a bit worried. "I don't think so. This is the city police station. When it was built with explosion-proof standards, and it couldn't collapse so easily." Tan Mingshan shook his head. Four people sat down quietly, waiting for the news. A few people took out their phones, flipped through the news online, and the TV in the office was also on, keeping an eye on the situation at any time. "I'll go to the restroom." Qi Shuo stood up and walked towards the restroom next to the stairs. Bai Xi glanced at him, withdrew her gaze, and continued to collect information online. At around 6 p.m., Zhou Jin and a few others did not come back, and Tan Mingshan received news from the city. "Old Tan, the superiors have been unable to contact you. The city cannot take care of you now, so hurry up and find a safe place to hide. This ant infestation is raging." On the other end of the phone, someone interrupted and an anxious shout came, "Old Tan, let's not talk for now." A blind hang-up sound came from the phone. Tan Mingshan sighed and said, "Let's seek our own blessings. The city can't care about us anymore. Didn't they use our method?" Han Dong asked. Tan Mingshan shook his head and said, "I don't know, the phone was hung up in a hurry. Shall we go home now? It doesn't seem safe outside either." Han Dong looked at the empty street outside, and a tense atmosphere spread invisibly. At this moment, the wooden boards pressed down by the big stones were also being pushed up and boasted loudly. "Those big ants are coming out." Bai Xi noticed the movement, and inside the green belt outside, another mound of soil appeared. "Let's go. This place is no longer safe." Qi Shuo stood up to leave, and Bai Xi didn't want to stay either. Without rescue, the main force cannot find it, and there is still an ant colony below. Lonely and helpless. She remembers that most of the missing persons were concentrated in the morning and evening, and now it happens to be this time period. "Uncle Tan, I'll go back to the dormitory with you anyway." Han Dong planned to go with Tan Mingshan with some help. Bai Xi thought for a moment and decided not to follow them. Tan Mingshan and Han Dong leave a good impression, but in the face of disasters, human nature cannot withstand the test. And Qi Shuo, the taskmaster, also poses a potential threat to her, so it's better for her to walk alone. After the decision was made, the four of them went their separate ways, and the ants outside had already poked their heads out. The four people hurriedly ran out of the police station at the fastest speed possible, and the ants were no slower than them. Once surrounded, it would be very troublesome. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Wen'an City 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Wen'an City 6. After coming out, Bai Xi played a trick and didn't run in the direction of the rental house. She randomly picked a direction and rushed forward with all her mind. When she left, she also paid special attention to Qi Shuo and found that he was in the opposite direction of herself, which made her feel much more at ease. After running for a distance, Bai Xi looked around. There is no one above the street, and the city government has issued a notice throughout the city about the big ants. No one dares to wander on the street. Confirming that no one was following, Bai Xi took out her phone navigation and ran towards the direction of the rental house. Her house is rented on the 3rd floor, which is safer than the ground floor and can pass system tasks, indicating that it is currently a relatively safe place. In order to hurry back, Bai Xi swept a shared electric bike on the roadside and rode an electric horse all the way back home. On the road, one can occasionally see people in roadside shops scrambling for food, and there are also brave ones standing on the roadside, staring at Bai Xi with eyes on them. Bai Xi dared not stare at these people, let alone stay. She didn't know if these people were players, and it was best to stay away from them. Trembling with fear all the way, Bai Xi returned to the vicinity of the rental housing community. A sudden sound of brakes came from the corner, and Bai Xi looked at the person in front of her in surprise. She flattered and smiled, "Brother Qi, what a coincidence." Ye Xiao leaned against the wall, hugging his chest with both hands, calmly looking at Bai Xi, and said with a friendly smile, "Unfortunately, I'm here specifically to wait for you." "Yeah. What's Chiga asking me for? Are you missing leg accessories?" Bai Xi was flattered and got off the car, silently blocking the electric bike in front of her. Ye Xiao noticed Bai Xi's small movements and continued, "Are you also a player?" "Ah. What?" Bai Xi pretended not to understand and looked confused. "What player?" But Ye Xiao saw through her poor acting skills and smiled, "I thought you were just an ordinary indigenous person, but I didn't expect you to be a player or a novice player. How could I miss such a good opportunity?" He stood up straight, and the black dagger appeared in his hand. Bai Xi's body tightened instantly, and his right hand was placed behind him, taking out the short knife she had bought before. "Qi Gu, what are you talking about? It's inexplicable." "It doesn't matter, whether it's true or not," Ye Xiao suddenly became fierce and gloomy. "Just kill it and you'll know. Let me see what good things you can drop." While speaking, Ye Xiao suddenly erupted and waved his black dagger towards Bai Xi. Bai Xi was surprised by his speed and pushed the electric car in front of him forward, turned around, and ran backwards, but Ye Xiao's speed was even faster. Before Bai Xi could run a few steps, Ye Xiao caught up and, like a cat catching a mouse, proudly said, "You haven't been strengthened yet, you're not my opponent." At the same time, a black dagger swung towards her neck, and Bai Xi's back cooled, casting a shadow of death over her entire body. She quickly used her speed card, and in an instant, her senses increased, and the speed of the dagger seemed to slow down. Once again, he stepped back and dodged the incoming dagger. The sharp blade of the dagger scraped against his skin, leaving a shallow bloodstain on his neck. Ye Xiao's face showed surprise and he said, "Did you use a speed card? How many tasks did you do, and you actually got a speed card? Novices are really taken care of." Bai Xi didn't listen to his nonsense and turned around to run. She is well aware that even when using a speed card, she is not a match for Ye Xiao, and running is the only option. But Ye Xiao didn't let go of Bai Xi. He stood up, lightly tapped on the wall, jumped in front of Bai Xi, grabbed her neck with one hand, and directly lifted her up. "Do you see? This is the gap between us. You used the speed card, but it's still slower than me, and my strength can easily strangle you." Ye Xiao's eyes were cold, and he had already regarded Bai Xi as a dead person. Bai Xi's face turned red, with veins bulging on her forehead. Her feet kept bouncing in the air, her hands on her neck, trying to pull Ye Xiao's hand open. But her little strength couldn't shake Ye Xiao, and the oxygen in her chest gradually decreased, making Bai Xi extremely uncomfortable. "Death is right in front of us." At that moment, she seemed to see the kind smiles of her grandparents and the food cooked by her mother. Shi, come back for dinner soon. Dad will be home soon." My mother's familiar smile appeared before her eyes. "You're almost dead, can you still laugh?" Bai Xi didn't panic like others, which surprised Ye Xiao. He has killed many people, and everyone is afraid to pray for mercy, but this girl smiled. Ye Xiao's words pulled Bai Xi back from her consciousness illusion. She looked at Ye Xiao with a particularly strong will to survive, and the corner of her mouth curled up. Of course you don't understand. After speaking, Bai Xi disappeared. Before Ye Xiao could react, a short knife plunged into the back of his head, causing Bai Xi to fall to the ground, panting uncontrollably. You are. Before he could finish speaking, Ye Xiao died with the surprise and disbelief on his face. Player Bai Xi, kill Qi Yubin, a mid-level player of the same level, and receive a point reward, which will be calculated together at the end of the game. After breathing recovered, Bai Xi stood up and picked up the 3 cards and daggers on the ground, placed them in the system space, and turned around to run into the community. The community was quiet and there was no one, and the security guard was also missing. She carefully walked back to the rental house along the tree shade. After entering the house, the first thing to do is to check for any signs of invasion. Confirming safety, Bai Xi breathed a sigh of relief and sank herself into the sofa, huddled together in fear. On the second day of the game, I encountered 2 players one after another, neither of whom was easy to match. Especially Ye Xiao. It's not Qi Yubin, it's all fake from beginning to end. The previous kindness and friendliness were probably to test her. Bai Xi didn't know where she missed the filling, which made Qi Yubin so certain that she was a new player. Thinking of this, she let out a sigh. How difficult this game is. Take out the 3 cards that Qi Yubin dropped, 1 growth card, 1 invisibility card, 1 item card, and Qi Yubin's black and gold dagger. The growth card and invisibility card are both green level, and can be invisible for 10 minutes. The item card is at the blue level and can bring something from this world back to the original world. It is basically a useless card. The black gold dagger belongs to the gray level weapon and is a game reward that can only be used in the game world. The same applies to other cards. It seems that I am lucky to have obtained mostly green and blue level items, without any white items. Putting things away, drowsiness surged. Bai Xi squinted on the sofa for a while. She was really exhausted. On the street outside the community, a group of people discovered Qi Yubin who had been killed. Boss, look at that dead person. A few people walked over and looked at Qi Yubin's lifeless appearance, exclaiming in amazement. Master! Kill me with 1 blow. Judging from his expression, full of surprise and disbelief, he probably didn't expect to be killed either. Boss, was this done by players? The middle-aged man who was called the boss frowned and said, this person is definitely an old player. Let's be careful not to be targeted by him. Seeking investment, recommended votes, comments, so cool. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Wen'an City 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Wen'an City 7. When Bai Xi woke up, it was already evening. Stir-fried shredded pork and green pepper with green pepper and white rice mixed with corn chips. Turn on your mobile phone and check new news while eating. Various online forums have already exploded. Oh my goodness. There is a really big ant colony below our community, and many people have been dragged directly into the hole. I was scared to death. I saw a person being dismembered alive into pieces. Our house is on the 1st floor. Whoever can come and rescue me, I will give you 10,000 yuan in compensation. 10,000. Even if you give 100,000, there may not be someone coming. Brother, here's a piece of advice for you. It's better to ask for help than to ask for help. Suddenly, a new video appeared online. In the video, several people are surrounded by large ants, among which the black and bright ants, which are several times larger than the surrounding ants, are particularly prominent. Bai Xi recognized it at a glance, which should be the soldier ants she had guessed before. The later part of the content was mosaic, but based on the color, it can be inferred that these people were dismembered. My goodness! Is it really the end of the world? Have you noticed? We can't receive any news from outside, we can only receive speeches from our city of Wen'an, and other places seem to be blocked. I also noticed that I can't even send messages to my classmates in the provincial capital. This is too scary. Have we been banned from making food for these big ants? The panic and fear that come from the internet are spreading and affecting everyone in reality. However, Bai Xi was not surprised. Being able to send them to this world and isolate information from a city was not a difficult task for the game. After reading for a while, Bai Xi turned off her phone and walked into the kitchen to wash dishes. The information collected online just now not only shows that Wen'an city has been banned and quarantined, but also that ants seem to be becoming increasingly active. And after seeing the blood, these ants went crazy, their combat power skyrocketed instantly. Just as Bai Xi was carefully considering what to do, a news report from the entire game alarmed all players. During the process of completing side quests, the laboratory gene potion leaked prematurely, accelerating the game process and leaving 24 hours until the mutation occurs. Players are advised to be prepared. Upon seeing this message, all players cursed open. Sleeping trough. Who the hell is that? If I run into him, I'll have to kill him. This TM is a mentally disabled person. There are even SB who actively increase the difficulty of their tasks in this world. In a hidden laboratory, a young man looked at the news in front of him with a bewildered expression. The computer screen in front of him displayed. The drug release is complete and is expected to spread throughout the city within 36 hours, what did I do? The young man couldn't figure it out, he just accidentally touched the red button. That's it, now it's a public enemy of the game. No, I can't show up. The young man thought for a moment and decided to smash the jar. Anyway, this laboratory bug dares not come, so why don't we just stay here and wait until the game is over? Upon seeing the news, Bai Xi was also amazed. Is there such an operation? The game notification has 24 hours left, which means there are only 24 hours left for relative safety. Bai Xi sorted out the existing supplies and found that there was enough inventory in the space for her to eat for 10.5 days. There were still some items that had not been packed in the house, so eating for 3 to 5 days should be no problem. I don't know how long this game will end, and I don't know if these supplies are enough. But going out now is too dangerous. Other players will definitely not miss the last 24 hours of hoarding time, so she should stay at home with peace of mind. At 9 p.m., Bai Xi was awakened by a muffled thunder. Immediately after, crackling raindrops hit the window glass, accompanied by rumbling thunder, lightning illuminating the dark room. She walked to the window and looked out at the city streets washed away by the rain, her heart sinking. On the third day of the game, the survival rate was 93%. It rained heavily all night, and in the morning, there were still pattering raindrops dancing. The street was washed clean, and a few big ants were wandering on the street. After breakfast, Bai Xi sat by the window, observing the situation outside. I received the game news yesterday at 7 p.m., and there are still more than 10 hours before the big change. Before long, Bai Xi was sweating all over. Why is it so hot today? It's like a steamer, she said. The sky outside also brightened up, gray and somewhat gloomy. The heavy rain last night had not yet fully penetrated, and the weather did not cool down. It was unusually hot and humid. Dong dong dong, there was a knocking on the door outside, and a girl's anxious voice came in. Hello, is anyone there? Bai Xi walked to the door, opened her cat's eye, and saw a cute-looking girl outside. What's up? Bai Xi asked. Visiting for no reason is likely premeditated, and the previous events have made Bai Xi wary of everyone, especially the players. Upon hearing the response, the girl outside the door looked happy and said, Sister, do you have any fever-reducing medicine? My younger brother suddenly has a fever and it's still raining outside. I dare not go out. I don't have any fever-reducing medicine. Bai Xi decisively refused, refusing to contact anyone, especially those who were unfamiliar. In fact, she has antipyretic drugs. She used to hoard supplies and didn't know what to buy, so she bought a little bit of everything, just food. Sorry to bother you. The girl's face flashed with disappointment, but she wasn't angry. In the apocalypse, everyone is in danger. Helping is a duty, not helping is a duty. Before leaving, she kindly reminded her, "Little sister, don't go out when it rains, and don't get wet in the rain. There may be some problems with this rain." After speaking, the girl turned around and walked towards the opposite door, knocking on the door and asking questions, but received no further response. The girls knocked on the door one by one and soon there was no movement. Bai Xi stood behind the door, frowning, feeling both conflicted and guilty. That girl really seemed to need help, and the last word of concern poked her. But Bai Xi was really afraid that she had a premeditated intention to test herself. As a child who grew up in peacetime, Bai Xi was very conflicted. Emotionally, she should help that girl, but rationally, she should not touch anyone in danger. A few minutes later, Bai Xi put on her backpack and went out. She listened carefully in the hallway now, and the girl was going up the 5th floor through the stairs, knocking on doors one by one, with no one else around. The girl knows how to walk the stairs and her vigilance is not low. After some thought, Bai Xi quietly placed a box of fever-reducing medicine at the staircase leading to the 6th floor and turned back to her own cabin. Is the girl really in need? She no longer cares, just comforting her conscience is enough. The girl knocked on the 5th floor, but there was still no response, feeling a bit discouraged. She quickly picked herself up and continued up the 6th floor. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Wen'an City. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Wen'an City. Walking to the staircase, the girl was surprised to see a brand new box of fever-reducing medicine. She quickly picked up the medicine box and a familiar smell came from it. It's that sister. She knew that this box of medicine was placed by the lady who responded to her, and there was also her scent on it. She was not angry with the indifference of everyone, and it was normal for everyone to consider each other in the apocalypse, but she was somewhat disappointed. Looking at the medicine box in her hand, the girl's heart warmed and she smiled at the corners of her mouth. Turning around, he quickly went downstairs and returned to his own room. When Bai Xi returned to the house, it rained heavily outside. Due to the girl's reminder, Bai Xi began to pay attention to the creatures exposed to rainwater. What's so special about this rain? The dripping raindrops hit the glass window, making Bai Xi exceptionally calm. After observing for a while, she could only confirm that the rain was not that strong acid rain and would not corrode. Recalling the previous announcement, Bai Xi guessed, is it possible that it's related to that genetic drug? After thinking for a while, Bai Xi didn't come up with a result, so she gave up. She is not a technological genius and cannot speculate on these professional things. Since rain is dangerous, just don't touch it. In this situation, staying indoors is safer than anywhere else. At this moment, a deafening thunder rang out, and the deafening sound made one's heart tremble. It's raining again, big drops of rain seem to be breaking glass, and the iron sheet next door is shading the sun, making a popping sound. The ants on the street are missing, and the rainwater has flooded the entire street, rapidly flowing into the sewer, forming a vortex. Isn't even the big ants moving in such a heavy rain? Bai Xi wondered. Sure enough, she found news online that several office buildings and residential buildings in the city have been occupied by ants. Many people in the building were killed, some ran out in the rain, and some promptly moved to the top few floors. Just as I was about to click on the web page and see the details, I suddenly ran out of internet. Bai Xi walked around the room, but there was no internet or signal anywhere. Looking at the time, it's 10:30 in the morning. Okay. As expected, the game is accelerating. Let's start with a network outage, and then it's likely to be about water, electricity, and more. Thinking of this, Bai Xi quickly ran into the kitchen and, while there was still electricity and gas, cooked all the meat and vegetables she had bought and stored them in the space. Time in space is static, so there is no need to worry about expiration or deterioration. Bai Xi used the mineral water she bought herself, and dared not use tap water. Water is the source of life. She doesn't stock up on mineral water much, but there are also plenty. One person is enough. After 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Bai Xi brought a plate of garlic sprouts back to the pot and savored white rice, then went to bed to rest and rejuvenate. After 7 o'clock, I don't know if she can still sleep, but she needs to stay alert and welcome any possible sudden changes. The siblings in the same building also chose to conserve their energy. The girl hugged the 7 or 8-year-old boy in her arms and lightly patted his back. Go to sleep. You may not be able to sleep later. The boy obediently closed his eyes and said, Sister, I fell asleep. The girl smiled warmly and closed her eyes, and the room quieted down. The game is difficult, but she and her brother will definitely survive. At 6 p.m., the sky cleared up. The outside of the house was completely new, except for the reflective puddles. There was no trace of any living creatures, let alone the traces of big ants, as if it had disappeared. In no time, a few people smashed the door of the supermarket downstairs across the street, collected several large packages of supplies, and headed towards other shops. Behind the crowd, Bai Xi seemed to see a black shadow darting by at the corner of the street, but when she looked again, there was nothing. She stared at that place for a while without any shadows. Did I see it wrong? Bai Xi shook her head and thought to herself that she was in a big fuss, continuing to watch the situation outside. Some people took the lead, while others bravely ran out and looted nearby supermarkets, clothing stores, and gold shops. Except for players and a few smart people, the vast majority of people have not yet realized the seriousness of the crisis, and more people want to fish in troubled waters. In the gold shop across the street, a man ran out in fear, shouting and screaming. He was carrying a backpack, with a thick gold chain hanging from his unfinished backpack. Following closely behind, big ants chased after him one by one. The blood dripping from the man along the way stimulated the ants behind him, who swarmed around. Soon, the man remained motionless, leaving only a pool of bright red blood. Looking at the scene before her, Bai Xi felt very uncomfortable and couldn't stop retching. The reaction to killing Qi Yubin yesterday wasn't as strong. This scene is too stimulating. Before Bai Xi could adapt, a shop burst out with screams of terror, which happened to be the group that started grabbing the supermarket. None of the 5 people in the group ran out, only one ran to the door but was grabbed back by the huge claws protruding from the shadows. Bai Xi swallowed her saliva. This is the game with accelerated progress, full of crises and thrilling steps. Time passed by minute by second, and the streets became quiet again. At 7 o'clock, there is another news report for the entire game. Currently, the survival rate of the game is 85%. Please note that due to early game progress, this round of the game will enter difficult mode. From now on, if you persist for more than 7 days, the rewards for the last 10% of surviving players will double, and the rewards for novice players will triple. Please work hard to survive. As soon as the news came out, all players, especially veteran players, went berserk. Ciao. Difficulty mode, isn't that the only difficulty that comes with advancing to the trial? MMP, don't let me meet you, otherwise I will crush you into meat paste. It's really unlucky to be in the same round of the game as such an SB. Bai Xi doesn't have the same reaction as other players. She doesn't have a practical concept of the difficult mode, and at best, it's a bit more difficult. 30 seconds later, the light curtain disappeared. A white progress bar appears in the upper right corner of the line of sight, displaying 85%. Looking at the progress bar displaying the survival rate in front of her, Bai Xi didn't know what to do for a moment. She has no experience and doesn't know the specific difficulty mode of this game. Let's adapt to changes with immutability. Bai Xi began to bustle around the room, ready to leave at any time. She had seen ants on high buildings before, and those big ants were likely to come up to forage. There was no place that was absolutely safe. Entering the room, Bai Xi changed into clothes that were more suitable for exercise, and put some food in her backpack to cover her eyes. Bai Xi began to warm up inside the room. At 7.30, the white progress bar suddenly regressed to 80%. The total number of indigenous people and players in this game is over 215,000, and this 5% is over 10,000 people. More than 10,000 people died in half an hour. The game turns human lives into numbers, and behind each jumping number lies the passing of vivid lives. At this moment, Bai Xi deeply felt the cruelty and indifference of the game. Seeking investment, recommendation tickets, monthly tickets, comments, and encouraging authors. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Wen'an City. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Wen'an City. At around 8 p.m., as the sky darkened, there began to be some dense, rustling sounds around. The street lights are still holding on, and the orange lights attract the surrounding insects, bringing a little hope to the darkness. With a loud bang, the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground came, and the street lamps were knocked down by something. One after another, they went out, and darkness enveloped them once again. The meter-long black figure climbed up the opposite residential building and headed towards a bright window. The other bright windows were also smashed by something flying in the air, making a clanging sound. Several black shadows flew towards Bai Xi, who quickly turned around and pressed the switch on the wall, causing the room to fall into pitch black. Without any light, the black shadow adjusted its direction and flew to the side. Other people who react slowly may not be as lucky. Under the cover of darkness, screams of terror and powerlessness for help, as well as the sounds of unknown creatures crawling and crushing bones and flesh, lingered in one's ears, making one shiver all over and trembling with fear. Bai Xi leaned against the corner of the wall, reducing her exposure to danger and keeping an alert eye on the movements inside and outside the house. Time passed by minute by second, and the commotion outside grew louder and louder. The black shadows even tore at each other, causing a loud commotion that shook the doors and windows. The fourth day of the game. At 4 or 5 in the morning, the noise outside gradually subsided, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. This night was truly a thrilling night. At 6 o'clock, the sky gradually brightened up, and the black shadows outside disappeared, leaving only a mess. On the exterior walls of residential buildings, there are scattered small holes, broken glass windows, and deep scratches on the walls. The building, which was neat and brand new yesterday, has become dilapidated today. The streets are filled with dried brown blood, scattered broken glass, and unidentified limb remains. There are also some sunshades or iron guardrails above the streets, which are on the verge of collapse. Last night's commotion frightened many people, and everyone hid inside without going out. And the survival rate has also regressed to 75%, with over 20,000 deaths last night. The fifth day of the game. Yesterday was peaceful, but at night, those shadows would come out and move around. Due to the darkness of the light, Bai Xi could only speculate from the blurry shadows that the black shadows should be a variation of insects similar to ants, probably related to some genetic drug. At around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Bai Xi was silently eating when a knock came from outside the door. "Little girl, are you there? Can you lend us some water? Yesterday there was a sudden water outage, and we ran out of water." The speaker was an old lady. Bai Xi did not respond, nor did she have the desire to stand up and look at the cat's eyes. She felt that this voice was a bit unnatural, and at this moment, she dared not act kindly. It's already the fifth day of the game now, and everyone is locked in. There are 4 days long and 2 or 3 days short. The food that can be eaten directly at home should be basically exhausted, and the most important thing is that there is not much water, so the rice cannot be cooked and consumed. More and more people will be forced to go out in search of food and water these days. Based on her previous experience of reading novels and playing games, this is the most dangerous time. Man-made disasters are often more terrifying and violent than natural disasters. The lady outside the door didn't receive a response and looked at the tall and honest-looking man next to her with fear. The man lifted his chin towards the door, gesturing for his aunt to continue knocking. Auntie continued knocking on the door. "Little girl, Auntie knows you're here. You even left the door the day before yesterday. Can you help Auntie?" When encountering difficulties, everyone should help each other. If you remain silent like this, we will think that something has happened to you. Bai Xi rolled her eyes inside the room, borrowing water as needed, and even accused her of not helping each other. What's wrong? They still want to rush in directly. And as expected, Bai Xi was not disappointed outside the door, when a thumping sound came from the door lock. But Bai Xi didn't panic at all. The lock she changed to not only had a manual internal lock, but also her key had been locked and hadn't been removed yet. The person who changed the lock told her that as long as the key was not removed and the lock was reversed, people outside would not be able to turn it and could not enter. Unless you smash the door, anti-theft doors are not that easy to smash, unless there is violence from a sledgehammer and chainsaw breaking through the door. But in this situation, where is it so easy to find tools, and the noise is very loud? What if it attracts monsters? Outside the door, the honest man gave up after only a few minutes of tinkering, feeling unwilling and even slammed the door hard. Auntie's voice continued to ring. "Little girl, your door is really sturdy. You're not in danger, so Auntie can rest assured. You need to pay more attention to safety in this situation." After speaking, the two turned around and walked towards the fourth floor, repeating their old trick in front of the door of another room. There are two girls sharing the same apartment in this room, but they are not as vigilant as Bai Xi and can easily be forcibly entered by honest men and aunties. The two little girls were frightened, and one of them, who was bold, was about to drive the two out by manipulating what was at hand, but was blocked by an honest man. He and his aunt each restrained both girls. Auntie, despite her age, has a lot of strength in her hands. Subsequently, the girls' frightened cries for help rang out inside the room. The family next door turned a deaf ear and just ate silently. The child wanted to say something, but was given a mouthful of rice by their grandmother. "Baby, eat quickly." Grandma's untimely sudden concern, parents' silence and indifference, the child seemed to understand something. Disappointment flashed in their eyes, and they also learned from their parents to eat without hesitation. After the two of them left, Bai Xi sounded an alarm in her heart. The two of them were not friendly, and sooner or later they found her on the head. She walked to the window and took a look. Fortunately, she had chosen the third floor, which was only 6 meters away from the ground, so it should be easy to run. Bai Xi took out the ropes she had prepared for the previous big sweep from the space, compared them, and found roughly the same length. She then searched for a secure place inside the room where she could tie the ropes. Having determined the escape route, Bai Xi felt much more at ease. Continuing to warm up and maintain a good state was the key to survival. At this point, the survival rate decreased to 69% and more than 10,000 people died. Bai Xi dared not take it lightly, silently exercising and constantly paying attention to the movements around her. On the 6th day of the game, the survival rate was 58%. Auntie knocked on the door once in the morning, noon, and evening, and passed safely without any danger. On the 7th day of the game, the survival rate was 43%. Taking advantage of the increasing number of people searching outside during the day, Bai Xi had inventory and didn't need to go out. Aunt continued to knock on the door 3 times a day. On the 8th day of the game, the survival rate is 40%. For breakfast today, Bai Xi prepared a box of pure milk and bread for herself. She was enjoying it sweetly when her aunt knocked on the door outside. Compared to yesterday's gentle words and friendly demeanor, today's is more vicious. "Little girl, open the door. I know you're here. You haven't gone out these past few days. Isn't there a lot of food in the house? We are all so hungry that our hearts are on our backs, so you can't help us. We are all neighbors who look down but don't see each other. Your actions are too selfish." End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Wen'an City 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Wen'an City 10. Bai Xi walked calmly to the door and looked outside through her cat's eye. Outside the door was the ant who had been knocking on the door for 2 consecutive days, with a man and a woman behind her. The man had an honest face, while the woman had a seductive figure, and her face was filled with schadenfreude. "Little girl, if you don't open it again, I'll smash the door." Ant was clearly angry, with little patience left. The woman behind her sarcastically said, "Aunt Rong, you didn't come into our house so politely the day before yesterday. You know what the hell?" The ant turned around and looked down at the woman. "She hasn't taken out the key to this door and can't even unlock it. Give you face and call Rong Yi, you still have face." The woman looked at the honest man next to her and coquettishly said, "Brother Yong, do you see Rong Yi's attitude? At least she's your woman. Zhang Qingfang, don't do this kind of thing. Mr. Wang is not someone who can be blinded by beauty," said the ant with disgust as she saw the woman using this trick again. "Okay." Wang Yong shouted and stopped, "2 women playing together, it's really annoying. But this Rong old lady has thick skin and a ruthless heart, which is still useful. Zhang Qingfang has a good figure, and he hasn't been bored yet. It's a pity that those 2 tender student girls. He Wang Yong has been an ordinary person all his life, working hard on construction sites. Unexpectedly, he was selected by this magical game and became a player. Although it's a bit dangerous, having money and women, you can do whatever you want, it's really satisfying." Stopped by Wang Yong, Mrs. Rong and Zhang Qingfang dared not make a sound and lowered their heads, their faces filled with hatred and disgust towards Wang Yong. Seeing the 2 of them being impressed by his authority, Wang Yong felt particularly impressive and his self-esteem was greatly satisfied. He stepped forward alone, picked up the big hammer standing next to him, and was about to smash the door. The next moment, the sound of the key turning could be heard inside the door. Mrs. Rong's face lit up with joy. "I didn't expect this dead girl to open the door on her own. It seems she's also a tough idiot to deal with." Zhang Qingfang's face showed disdain, "But I want to see how good the little cheap skin that Mrs. Rong praised is." Wang Yong's expression flickered, he swallowed his saliva, and stared eagerly at the door. "What do you want to do?" After opening the door, Bai Xi stood at the door, looking at the 3 with a cold expression. She was unintentionally attracted by a silver ring on Zhang Qingfang's right index finger. Mrs. Rong didn't answer Bai Xi's questions at all and walked straight in, with Zhang Qingfang and Wang Yong following closely behind. Zhang Qingfang gave Bai Xi a white eye, but Wang Yong's eyes never left Bai Xi. A few people were not invited to enter, and Bai Xi did not stop them. "Only by closing the door can we beat the dog." These days, she has been paying attention to the situation outside, and those black shadows are actually mutated insects or arthropods. The weather is hot during the day, and they don't come out to move around. They mostly stay underground or in cool places. People who go out to search for supplies are at great risk of entering the house, especially on the 1st floor. Many times she saw different people walking into the same store, but never walking out again. The most important thing is that before dawn, she saw many black shadows entering the building where she was located. "This doesn't even run, can we keep it for feeding insects?" She had originally planned to leave after breakfast, but to her surprise, these people collided and the system even released a frustrating task. Newcomer side quests. Please obtain Zhang Qingfang's silver ring outside the door. Task reward. 1 lucky draw opportunity. This task is so temporary that it can't be any longer. The game is about her constantly facing danger and actively growing. After the 3 of them entered the room, Bai Xi turned around and locked the door behind her. Mrs. Rong and the 3 of them looked at her like fools. "Little girl, do you have anything to eat?" "We're all starving," Mrs. Rong pretended to be polite. Bai Xi shook her head, and their faces changed instantly. Wang Yong stood up and walked towards Bai Xi, with a nauseating smile on their faces. With a sneer, Bai Xi turned around and entered the bedroom. The three of them were all stunned for a moment. It's quite impressive. Wang Yong followed, while Mrs. Rong and Zhang Qingfang began searching for things in the room. In the bedroom, Bai Xi's back looked extremely beautiful, with smooth curves and slender legs that made Wang Yong drool. But Bai Xi was completely unaware of the danger behind her, holding a short knife that had seen blood before, hesitating whether or not to do that. Little sister, as long as you behave well, my brother will treat you well. In the darkness, Wang Yong showed his true expression, lewd and disgusting, and he couldn't wait to close the door. The next moment, Wang Yong's frightened voice came from the darkness. Ah ah ah. He covered his neck and looked at Bai Xi incredulously, wondering how she appeared in front of him in an instant. Soon Wang Yong died and returned to the west. Player Bai Xi, kill player Wang Yong of the same level to receive a point reward, which will be calculated together at the end of the game. This is Bai Xi's second murder, and she still feels a bit uncomfortable psychologically. Her disgust is also obvious, and her mind is a bit dizzy. This is the aftermath of the second skill space jump. Her body is too weak, and every spatial jump consumes a lot, causing her body to enter a period of fatigue. After a moment of delay, Bai Xi picked up the dropped item, which was a physical potion used to replenish the consumed energy and quickly restore the person to their best state. This is a life-saving good thing. Collect the physical potion into the system space, and Bai Xi walks out of the bedroom. Mrs. Rong and Zhang Qingfang searched the room but didn't find anything to eat. Seeing Bai Xi walking out unscathed, the two of them were surprised. Blood slowly flowed out from under the bedroom door. As they looked inside, Wang Yong collapsed on the ground with a frightened expression, and blood flowed all over the floor. Did the girl in front of me kill Wang Yong? That's Wang Yong who can tough 3 or 4 young people. In fact, if we were to confront each other head-on, Bai Xi would definitely not be a match for Wang Yong. But she can instantly appear in any position within a 1-meter radius circle. This moment of movement is not due to the visual difference caused by her fast speed in the eyes of others, but rather because she has truly traveled through space, giving a mythical feeling of shrinking to a ruler. In practical combat, this skill can be unexpected and catch the enemy off guard. You were already killed before you realized it. That's also why Bai Xi easily killed Qi Yubin and Wang Yong, because they didn't have much defense. Mrs. Rong and Mrs. Rong realized that they had kicked the iron plate today. They quickly nodded and bowed to Bai Xi, automatically retreating to the living room and leading to the entrance. However, the door was locked by Bai Xi and they couldn't even run away. Bai Xi calmly walked to the living room, sat on the sofa, and looked at Mrs. Rong and her 2 companions. Mrs. Rong quickly took a step forward, knelt down and begged for mercy. We didn't want to bully you. It's all Wang Yong, he forced us. We have no choice but to beg for mercy. Zhang Qingfang also knelt down and said with great eyes. Your ring is quite good. Bai Xi didn't want to waste time beating around the bush and went straight to the point. End of this chapter.